Yeah, it's time to talk about Multiversus once again. So on June 12, 2024, aka the same day I uploaded the Multiversus video, Player First Games and Warner Brothers pushed out a Twitter thread detailing planned fixes and changes for Multiversus going forward. It's not quite a roadmap of content that will be added, more so like a newsletter letting players know, hey, we're still working on the game's biggest issues. Last video I posed the question, is Multiversus beyond saving? And I was met with an incredible response from passionate fans, and I thank you guys dearly for that. For this video, I want to dedicate my time into dissecting the question I posed and trying my best to find an answer for it. To do that, we'll be diving into why these fixes to player feedback are simultaneously good and bad, questioning the cult-like community Player First Games and Multiversus have fostered, and most importantly, answering the question, can Multiversus be saved? In the Twitter thread on the Player First Games account, keep in mind it's the developer account and not the main game Multiversus account, there will be a test on this. They laid out a slew of near future changes. I'll highlight and comment on some fixes that pique my interest. Firstly, we had the call to fix Xbox performance, lower match desyncs, and remove some gameplay loops that had little counterplay. The Xbox performance issues are sadly a long-standing issue for whatever reason. Player First Games of the Xbox console go through a lot of hiccups and bugs during their beta test, and it seems like it's carried over to the full release. So a lot of these performance drops and glitches aren't necessarily new, and you guessed it, they were there since the last beta, meaning that this is a fix that should have been included with the full release if Player First Games had the time. I'm assuming the jump to Unreal Engine 5 only made pinning down these bugs and glitches harder, but nevertheless, here we are. Hopefully patches will smooth out issues that should have been fixed in a previous beta build of the game, but only time will tell. The match desyncs happened occasionally in beta, but let's be honest, that's a new issue from the UE5 edition of the game, and if Player First Games delayed releasing Multiversus and had a couple more alpha or beta stress tests, it'd go a long way in smoothing out these issues on its full launch. Nevertheless, we are eternally Player First Games guinea pigs, so here's hoping the match desyncs get sorted soon. The gameplay loops being fixed are nice, and patch 1.02 is already moving to address some of these concerns. Harley Quinn finally got her slide attack hurt box extended, along with adding a bit less hit stun to avoid repetitive combo structure, which is a really good choice considering as a Harley player, once I land a fully charged slide, the game was basically decided in my favor as I could combo and freeform and do whatever I want, and a majority of the matches led to my win. Okay, page 1 down. Sure that the next couple won't be as long. Fellas, there's 7 posts, 7 on the fixes they want to make with Multiversus. Sorry for the aside, let's look at what else is getting fixed. So they're looking into adding back 3 features: spectator, free-for-all, and deciding to swap neutral and forward attacks. All things that worked in the previous betas that, let's be honest, had no excuse being gone from launch, and the fact it's getting re-added is still low-key insulting for a game we paid money for, but hey, I'm glad they're coming. There will be a setting to adjust input buffers as well. This is a big one, as a 30-frame input buffer that's currently on for all is preposterous and should have never made it to launch. Not to mention, oh yeah, once again, this was a fix they removed from beta. They want to work on allowing players to keep a party between PvE and PvP. Something I failed to bring up in my last video was just how bad the user experience is in PvE to PvP. Inviting a friend to rifts is so painfully slow and buggy that it makes an already lackluster mode feel even more unpolished, doubly so when you consider getting 100% in a rift, as that requires a teammate. So I'm very glad they're addressing this issue. They did discuss adding ranked back, but they wanted to feel out the game's balance before adding it back, which, not gonna lie, is one of the most damning pieces of evidence that WB forced this game out the door. Let's put a pin in that. I'll get into why I feel that way soon. For now, let's discuss some of the positives of the whole ordeal. A new patch that just got pushed out now allows us to get 50 XP per win and 25 XP per loss. That's an excellent step in the right direction that actually encourages me to play a lot more, grind the game a ton while getting rewarded fairly for both performing really well or not making me feel as bad when I have an off day. Now granted, it's not a system I personally would want, to be fair. I want to be rewarded for my performance in a platform fighter. You know, beating someone 3 stocks to 0 should grant an extra XP boost. How many spikes or off the top blast zone KOs do I get? How often am I using my specials? You know, things of that nature, very akin to FPS games. But that's just me asking for too much, and the battle pass kind of already scratches some of those itches, to be fair. It also doesn't help that that we still don't have the rested XP as a bonus, so maybe that's why my brain's going in that direction. On top of that, we are still missing functions like the local co-op queue that allows you and a local player to queue side by side as you take on people online, which, heck, even Smash Ultimate has that. Those are just some things I would really like to come back for feedback. The login bonus event was also extended until July, which, hey, that's really good. We are avoiding FOMO and still respecting players' time. It's a mistake that was corrected from the launch version of the game, and it happened quickly. That's something I have to applaud. But now it's time for some tough love once again. This is directed both towards Player First Game and Warner Brothers, as well as the community as a whole. And it might sound a little parasocial here, but judging by Twitter responses in the MVS scene and how personally some people took my last video, I don't think that'll be a problem, right? I want to highlight a comment from my previous video. The opening kind of hits the nail on the head for how I feel about Multiversus in its current state. To quote, Multiversus can't be saved without reworking gameplay, rewards, and their entire roster plus their kits to emphasize skill and competitiveness. The way I see it, the devs are so communicative because they know they've dropped a mid product. End quote. While I don't agree with all of that, and I do consider it a bit harsh, I gotta say it did kind of hit the nail on the head in some aspects. You're telling me Rake's been disabled because they had to go over and recheck if the balancing of characters was suitable for ranked? Like, before we all start glazing Player First Games for this decision, why don't we take a step back and ask ourselves the question, why is this the case? Why are so many characters ridiculously broken or needing constant hotfixing? This is all indicative of a game that was either rushed or a dev team that just truly doesn't know how to handle its fighting game balance, and if that's the case, they clearly need to get more QA testers or pros that can find these issues, not yes men that blindly defend every decision Player First Game makes just because they want to play a brand new platform fighter. Newsflash to the community, if this game continues to have these balancing issues, you won't have a game to defend or a community to run back towards. We all want Multiversus to be the best it can be, but it's so evident either the devs at PFG or WB are working overtime to make sure that doesn't happen. Multiversus needed a long delay, one that lasted until 2025 or the end of 2024 to implement some of these fixes, not a half-baked launch that is going to hurt the game in the long run, turning away both returning and potential new players. Now, these next couple takes are going to be 100% a personal opinion on the gameplay. Don't get it twisted, I do my research, I hit the lab, so I want to discuss what I think may be the problem with Multiversus gameplay systems in its current state. Number 1. Fighters shouldn't be this buggy. Every patch they put out breaks something, and no, before the PFG fans come out, that's not normal. It's kind of insane that the game was even released in this state in the first place, considering a lot of these character flaws carried over from the beta. While I understand social media is an amazing tool to pin down and locate many of these bugs, glitches, or exploits, it does not explain the frequency of how often this game keeps breaking. Just this patch recently, Harley Quinn no longer has access to her emotes, for example. These fighters still have bugs in their movesets and kits. It is insufferable how often the game breaks at the seams, and that's not even getting into how busted certain characters are, which is a conversation for another time. As for a personal note, gosh, I miss the old Multiversus perk system. I truly believe half of the issues with this game stem from the severe cutback of perks. In the beta, we had a ton of unique perks, and a majority of them offered stacked bonuses when you correlate them with your teammate. Ice to Beat You, for example, will let all heavy projectiles deal 1 stack of ice, and when stacked with the teammate, go up to 2 stacks of ice, letting you freeze the enemy team quickly if you coordinated well. This perk with, say, a Tom and Jerry and Gizmo team could do insane work, and I think it goes without saying, but the game allowed for some truly disgusting combos. Sure, it can be hard to balance around that, I don't envy the devs at all, but I mean, gunning it completely on launch for the most part, that's alienating a huge chunk of why people are playing Multiversus in the first place. The way I see it, 1 is only the most popular mode now because the game's perk system has essentially been mangled. The perks helped alleviate a lot of the nonsense 2's matches brought in beta, especially when it came to defense and utility stacks. It's what made 2's really fun and kind of the main mode for Multiversus. It also, for me at least, had a lot of potential as an esport. It's really cool watching teams make on-the-fly decisions as they work together to cut stocks down, and the matches were electrifying. 1's, even in beta, has always been a slog for me to watch and play. It's just seeing someone get put in a loop, they take like 60 damage, cue the dodge spam fest akin to Smash 4, the aggressor takes a stock, sets up the util, and begins camping and getting light pokes off until they die, and we restart the cycle. This is due to a combination of things. The kits in Multiversus do not really work for 1v1 gameplay. That's exactly why in any Multiversus top 8, you'll see a lot of overlap in terms of how characters function. Let's take the recent coin box as an example. Harley 1, a character with insane loops, easy kills off the top, side, and bottom due to an overtuned kit that in 2s can easily be handled. Teams can simply snipe the Harley balloon, stopping Jack in the Box from edge guarding as effectively. You can prevent Bat Bomb from coming out by assisting the teammate before they blow up. Wonder Woman's entire kit is not only insane in 2s, as she has insane priority on moves in hurt boxes that make very little sense, seeing how her sword and shield beat out pretty much every move in the game. She also could give herself and a teammate full armor and put that in a 1's environment, and yep, you basically have a character who could constantly take hits with minimal knockback while sustaining themselves via a minimal cooldown period. Sprinkle in some easy loops that shouldn't even be in 1s in the first place, because remember, these kits were built for teams, meaning that your teammates should be able to bust you out of them, but due to the format, you just have to eat 60 damage per stock once she gets going. Gizmo was just a terror. The car has too much priority, and the hit and hurt box on it feels nigh impossible to counter. Their floating fair and how wide of a hitbox the umbrella is offers little counterplay, and then of course that homie could shoot you down like Green Arrow with his edge guarding game, which is extremely hard to challenge. The list goes on and on with these characters, but I think you guys get the gist. The game is not and never was designed for 1s. The character movesets are clearly designed to play in 2s, but for whatever reason, both player first games and the fan base since Jump rejected this ideal, and it's caused this awful shift which tries to put these cooperative character designs into a box that doesn't suit many of them, leading to situations where balancing becomes an even harder mess. But hey, now we have our answer to why Perks got basically gutted going into launch. It's because they tried to appease two very different crowds of gameplay and gameplay styles instead of doing what player first should have done from the jump, and this is going to be my hottest take. Just treat 1s as a side mode. Push the fact the game is not designed for 1s, and it's just there for people who want to goof around and play their favorite WV character. For crying out loud, it's in the name of the game, Multiversus. The whole point was a crossover of WB characters and its team-centric focus. I know not everyone has friends to play with, but that's where your systems have to step up, not step down. Add voice chat, add emotes that can function as callouts like an arrow telling a teammate to spike, or let players equip it via controller bindings. Let people party up after a match. There's so many fixes to keeping 2s as a viable mode, and instead they opted for what I consider to be a rushed decision to funnel majority of the player base into a 1s formula, in fear that the player base would dry up, leaving 2s as a mode obsolete. Again, as someone who backed this game, who hosted 2s tournaments, I'm left devastated that this is the direction the game is going, and no amount of patches or course correction can fix the damage that has been done to the core systems of the game. And we aren't even at the biggest problem. That one is... Herein lies, in my opinion, PFG's biggest flaw. A lot of people have been critical in the past of their lack of communication. I'm here to chastise their overabundance of it. Hot take, but player first games constantly talking about fixing bugs and glitches, along with basically asking which character should be getting nerfed or buffed next patch via social media, is not really indicative of great communication. It's one, truly the bare minimum most developers do in these AAA-esque environments, and two, it really shouldn't be in the player base's hands to buff and nerf characters. From every top 100 bugs pro offering genuine feedback and advice, there's lower skilled players who complain all the time about, say, Jason's sleeping bag grabbing, and if enough fellas start chiming in or complaining on Twitter, we fall into this endless feedback loop of characters constantly getting changed with little to no rhyme or reason. During the beta era, we saw a lot of this. If you don't believe me, down below I'll link all the Batman changes he had throughout the beta time. And as much as I enjoy power to the players and all that, the community response should be used as a baseline test for roster changes, not necessarily treated as gospel. I often bring up the Killer Instinct model of how to go about changes for characters in a free-to-play fighting game. Sourced from the interview on the Hold Back to Block Killer Instinct documentary, combat designer of KI fame Keats detailed how the team went about fixing characters while involving fan feedback from both casual and top players alike. I'll try my best to break this down using Killer Instinct as an example, and I highly recommend checking out the doc when you have the time. Links in the description below. When it came to fan communication in the fighting game ecosystem, the Killer Instinct developers streamed combat changes, allowing fans to see patches essentially before they went live. They showed off what changes were made, and the devs broke down why they made said changes in the stream. I'm obviously not asking player first games to do this. Their patch notes already do a really great job of laying out why characters get tweaked, and these streamed combat patches often led to a lot of infighting in the community and people who got a bit of an inflated ego trying to dictate how the developers should tweak their game. I do want to highlight, however, the difference maker between how these games handled said patch cycles with this influx of fan feedback. In Killer Instinct, players were very upset with this character named Jago. He's basically the Ryu Ken of the game. Amazing fireball, awesome Rekka kick, and a pretty easy combo structure that made bro a beast. Couple that with Killer Instinct's instinct meter, which allowed you to regenerate health when you're in critical condition depending on how much damage you put out. Throw it in a gumbo and you had a recipe for frustration. So many players, pros and casuals alike, got mad and argued that Jago should not have access to a healing factor that good. These players rallied together via social media and forums to beg for changes to his healing factor. So, seems like an easy problem for the Killer Instinct team to fix, right? Well, not exactly. See, the Killer Instinct team spent 4 months testing and delving into what really made Jago a terror to fight. To quote Keats, they wanted to find the disease, not the symptom, with Jago, which 100% should be the approach to balancing any game if possible. The devs came to the conclusion that Jago's healing factor wasn't a problem at all. The true problem was Jago didn't have any bad matchups. Why? He was never weak anywhere on screen. This kick move you see right now in its original state was a beast, letting Jago control mid-screen effortlessly, and thanks to Jago's sword and other long-reaching normals, it made for a very hard experience for a character to contest Jago. So the developers didn't try to have their cake and eat it too, a la trying to nerf the wind kicks along with nerfing Jago's healing. Instead, they decided to just nerf the frame advantage that the wind kicks have, making it easier for the full roster to punish Jago's mid-screen approach, and that made Jago start falling down the tier list ever so slightly. Upon revealing these patch notes, everyone started yelling and complaining about the KIS team's lack of nerfing Jago's healing factor. About a month goes by and you'll start to notice that players stopped complaining about Jago and he started dropping down and having bad matchups. They found the disease, not the symptom of what made Jago so overpowered. Now, to be fair, Keats and the Killer Instinct team are very experienced fighting game vets, and they know how to develop these things and manage a super tricky situation beautifully. I understand that this is Player First Game's first fighting game, so blunders in its buffs and nerfs are to be expected. But the point I want to hammer in is I'd love to see Player First Games take this fan feedback. However, though, take a step back and start looking a bit more closely at what exactly players are truly complaining about and why certain characters feel overtuned. On that side note, I kind of wish they stopped talking about patches that are basically disguised as hotfixes, because that's how the patch notes come off sometimes. It makes every minor change feel like this revolutionary fix to the community, when in reality, they're things that should have been implemented on the game's launch. Like, sure, it's communication, but only to a fan base of people who want their wallets validated. If you talk to the average Multiversus player, someone like my friend here who just kind of booted up the game to see what's all changed since the previous beta, do you think they're going to wait for week 2 for these issues to be addressed? I mean, be completely honest, if your first time experience with the game relaunching is constant desyncs, crashes, missing features from the previous beta, and the gameplay feeling slower and worse than you recall, in what world is that enough to bring players back? Never mind the fact that this game is going to have to go through, what, 4 to 5 patches, if I'm generous, to get back into a state where it's reminiscent of the beta. If Player Face Games truly wanted to keep goodwill of a returning player base, why lie? Why lie and say this is the game's 1.0 state? How come upon logging in, there's not a single welcome banner that tells players where the patch notes are? How come the only community involvement that is published in the game is the Discord? Literally a one-stop funnel into, let's say, the more eccentric side of the Multiversus community. I'm in the Discord, and sure, while the devs are active and QAs and announcement posts are frequent, it also keeps feeding into this echo chamber that this game has produced, both negative and positive. It's also very poorly moderated, where slurs in that nature get thrown around every once in a while with little to no repercussions. However, that lax moderation style over on the Discord clearly doesn't apply over to the Reddit, as they deleted my video going up there because it's too inflammatory, because it's rude towards the Player First devs, when in my opinion I did nothing of the sort. Yet people on the Discord could go around throwing slurs and all sorts of other stuff without any repercussions, and I find that a bit strange. And on top of that, there's this civil war between people that just want to stay hyper negative about this game for no reason, invading a space where we're supposed to be talking general constructive feedback, and there's over positive players that keep glazing and defending literally every minute decision Player First Games has done. There's so much toxic positivity on that side that it makes my stomach churn. Last video I was pretty courteous about it. This one is more opinionated, so not so much. No, just because a game is free to play and devs clearly worked hard on the product does not exempt it from criticism, especially when monetization is this bad. And as someone who paid for the product previously, I think I have the right to openly complain, chastise, and criticize the full product I was served, especially when the game doesn't meet bare minimum requirements on launch. It's not negativity, it's not people being unfair, it's called holding the companies accountable. Secondly, what is free? Like, yeah, you can download the game and play it at no cost, but is that truly free? Think about the cost for your ISP once you download this 11 gigabyte game, the cost from playing online if you own a console, the cost of the fighters you want to unlock, which take upwards to 72 real life hours for one fighter, the repetitive grind of rifts, which take a ton of hours, sometimes requiring paywalled sections. I ask again, how is that free? The amount of time you have to sink into this game to get very lackluster rewards doesn't really scream free to me, which is probably why so many players jump ship. Free to me is being able to, say, boot up a game like Fortnite and have access to the exact same experience as everyone else, or at the very least have an easily obtainable path to get to said similar experiences, which, if we're being fair, a majority of free-to-play games have access to. Multiversus does not. As a matter of fact, it quite literally paywalls you in certain rifts. Therefore, no, this game isn't simply just free. Your loophole as to why I or others can't complain about it gets flipped in reverse once you apply an ounce of logic into why people are harping more on a title like Multiversus over others like, say, Brawlhalla. Thirdly, I have the feeling a lot of y'all wouldn't be as defensive if there wasn't a tiny little part of you that agrees. Sure, maybe the way the message is being said is insensitive, and that I'll shake hands on. Insulting the devs and making fun of people is never a good way to get your point across. But these issues are still very real and need to constantly be discussed. If not for Player First Games, then at the very least a warning for future devs that try to enter the FGC. I want to love Multiversus, I want this game to do well, but I'm not going to break my back doing tricks on it. This isn't just a Multiversus issue, by the way. This stems as far back as the console wars in the gaming space. Just because you enjoy something doesn't negate the criticism other people have of said product. And I'm not saying to use your content creation or social media platforms to acknowledge these issues and join in on the discourse, but I am asking for a little bit of respect both ways. No matter how you slice the dice, what's happening with Multiversus is unacceptable. Our first big patch for this game is going to be addressing character balances and tweaks that should have been solved during the 2023 hiatus. We shouldn't need a patch for spectator mode, returning perks, beta character fixes, Xbox performance issues, free-for-all queue, setting adjustments, input buffers, endgame stats returning, ranked. All of these were in beta. This thread should not be met with people cheering, preaching how great the communication is from the devs. This thread, to me, is the bare minimum of what Player First Games should have been doing from jump. Listen to that list I just read. Go back. Here's the timestamp. This game is missing those many essential features that were already in a version of the game, and you guys are preaching good communication? You guys are in my comments telling me my videos are obsolete? No. It is you who is getting tricked, because these re-additions back into the launch version of the game are indicative that both Warner Brothers and Player First Games had no idea what they were cooking when they entered the platform fighter space. By the time these changes get put into Multiversus, the game's going to be well on its way out the door. And for the clout chasers and MVS fanboys, you guys are going to hop on Twitter, get Rise of Multiversus trending again to inject some life into the dying player base, when all you had to do was keep the pressure on Warner Brothers and Player First Games that more work clearly needed to be done with this game. Changes needed to be made, characters reworked, systems fundamentally should have been uprooted and replanted, but no. Instead, you got online, screamed about how everyone treated this game poorly, begged for its return, and for what? To watch it flounder again? Do you truly believe in Multiversus' potential? Do you really want the best for it? Or are you just looking for another hype wave scapegoat to suppress the fact that you're washed in other competitive titles? Told you I'd be a bit harsh. So, my fellow viewers, I come forth today to answer the question, can Multiversus be saved? My answer is a resounding not likely. Between the laundry list of fixes and changes from beta that need to be re-implemented, group that with the community who I truly believe wants to keep playing up an underdog story despite this game backing literally being Warner Brothers, and we have a recipe for one of the saddest disasters I've seen in the space. Here's my humble, honest advice, again from a parasocial angle. The game needs a laser focus on the quality of life updates. We don't need character changes or reworks or fixes, none of that. Right now, we just need the game to be stable. Rift should work, being able to move through lobby from PvE to PvP should be functional first things first. You shouldn't have to unlock characters in local play, I can't stress that enough. And then after you do all those fixes, go quiet for a bit and work on these characters. Then add in everything we had in the beta previously and come back harder with the re-energized Season 1.5, so to speak. With those features added back from the beta, along with a laser focus on bringing back twos, expand those perk potentials, and run another free unlock event akin to Agent Smith to drum up some hype, preferably a character that people actually want to see, these things should be good enough to inject a second wave of life into the game. But for my parting words, I truly wish no ill will on the Multiversus community, and I don't want anyone to think otherwise. I want the best for player first games going forward, and I still actively log in from time to time just because at the end of the day there's some fun to be had with this game. I'm not going to deny that, but I truly beg that the community understands that these issues are not normal for a AAA game, and you should not be okay with them, and it shouldn't be brushed aside either. We should be talking about this, championing this, and constantly reminding the devs that we need change, we need fixes, and it's not okay to launch the game in this state, because if we keep letting them abuse this cycle of mistrusting these consumers, your game's gonna die quicker, which means you're not gonna be able to make content, which means you're not gonna be able to run tournaments, and then eventually the game is going to dry up. All those opportunities are going to be gone, and you're gonna be left floundering and looking for the next big thing once again. These issues are avoidable. It's just up to the community to be loud enough about it and have constructive criticism from both sides when it comes to discussing a game that's had a launch this disastrous. I still believe in Multiversus, I still want it to come back, but honestly, it might be beyond saving. Thank you all so much for watching this video to the end. If you enjoy my comment, please drop a like and subscribe down below, as well as checking out my socials in the pinned comment. I'm trying to stream every weekend over on Twitch and YouTube, and seeing y'all around would help immensely. Okay, take care. I'll see you guys in the next one.